tastes like Starburst in the best way possible. Bye, girl. I'm pretty sure that when I toss my books on the floor that some people are probably cringing, but I don't care. It's just a book. It's not an artifact. I like it when my books get all creased and squishy. Hi, my name is Alana. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And on this channel, what do? We review books because that's why you're here. Because you saw the title of this and you were like, I want to know what this random person on the internet, burping, is finna say about Crime and Punishment by my boy D Money. I pulled this one out of the archives. Okay. Also, the word fitna, spelled F-I-N-N-A. I remember the first time I heard it. It is actually not originally my dialect. There was a coworker I used to work with, and that was in his vocab. Fitna. Like I'm fixing to do something. I'm fitna. Okay? And I was like, I like it. I'm going to steal it. It's not in my dialect whatsoever. My original, no. It is not. I am not a Southern belle, which is fine. But when I hear something and I like it, I take it. There is a book, actually, and I wasn't really interested in reading it. I don't think I need to read a whole book on the subject. I can observe it with my eyeballs. But I was in a bookstore in Durham, North Carolina this past year. I'm just pulling up my Crime and Punishment review so we can have a chat while I do this, which it would be helpful if I knew how to spell punishment. Here we go. And so I was just perusing the books, and there was a new release about how American English and British English are starting to merge again. And so we were picking up on each other's slang, and some of it we're even picking up on each other's pronunciations. And I'm thinking, America, let's say the United States, because the America is the Americas. Okay, let's talk about the U.S. The U.S. and the U.K. Okay, we're bedfellows. We have a bond, right? We cannot get away from each other. We cannot get away with each other. We watch each other's media. We listen to each other's musicians. We share language, especially with technology these days. We're watching each other's TV shows. We're picking up on each other's slang. And we cannot get away from each other. So why do we fight a war? Why? I'm sorry, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and the whole crew. Alexander Hamilton. We can't, the UK and the US, we cannot leave each other alone. And I am proposing that on behalf of international relations, regardless of what our governments are doing, that we, the people, okay, we like each other, right? I have quite a bit of, followers, subscribers, watchers in the UK. I think you're actually right after the US. I'm sorry, Canada. Step up, neighbor. It's going to the UK. Second most frequent country that watches. So, US, UK. We share a history. We cool, right? Let's jump into Crime and Punishment. So again, I read this in 2021. This was also a buddy read with my very good friend, one of my best friends named Rebecca. And we read it together. I think it took us a few months to read this. We slow walked it. And it took us, I would say 2.5 to 3 months to read it. And so this is a longer review. This is long. You guys, I'm not going to be able to pronounce one of these names. It's okay. If you speak Russian, don't judge me. For everything is already known to everyone, and everything hidden will be made manifest. Ooh! This is why I love Dostoevsky. That right there. There's even a Bible verse that says everything, I'm paraphrasing, but everything that's done in the dark will come to light. You can take me to church, Dostoevsky. Take me to church. My friend and I, we did take our time reading Crime and Punishment by our boy D Money. And so this is interesting. So this was the year that I also read The Brothers K in the first half of the year. And then in the second part of the year, I read Crime and Punishment. And as much as I love Dostoevsky, I remember at this time I was feeling a bit of Dostoevsky burnout. And I said I personally needed to take a break. And I needed to let those two pieces of fiction marinate, because that was a lot of Dostoevsky in one year. And I think these are probably his two most well-read, most frequently read books. So I think when people think of Dostoevsky, they think The Brothers K and they think of Crime and Punishment. But I have finished reading The Idiot at this point. I've also read Notes from Underground. And when I read The Idiot, I'm going to, I think, go into a little bit more detail about translating Dostoevsky, because I'm also reading, as of the recording of this video, I'm reading Dr. Zhivago. And Boris is a phenomenal writer. He's very smooth and eloquent and descriptive. And the same pair translated translated Dr. Zhivago. But Dostoevsky, and I have seen people critique Dostoevsky for this, he can be a bit of a clunky writer. I still love him. Don't get me wrong. He's one of my favorites. But he can be clunky, and I can see how there are challenges with trying to translate Dostoevsky. He can be clunky. He's a little dense, he's a little convoluted, maybe unnecessarily so. I will say this, then I'm going to jump into Crime and Punishment. Is Dostoevsky the most eloquent writer? No, he is not. He's no Tolstoy, he's no Boris, but I also love him for his clunkiness. Anyway. So, Crime and Punishment centers around Raskolnikov, who is a young man who commits a murder. And this murder has a severe impact on Raskolnikov. The reader spends quite a bit of time zoned in on his point of view and his psychological state surrounding this murder. So before, during, and after. It's like a madness that sets in. And this novel, there is a hair poking at me, man, doesn't just focus on his crime. That's driving me crazy. It also explores other various crimes and sins committed by other characters. And there's this overarching theme and question that my friend and I discussed when we read and discussed this book, is how does society determine the moral weight of crime, and are all crimes ultimately the same? His name is a mouthful. Raskolnikov truly feels that his murder is justified because the person that he killed has caused harm to multiple people throughout a period of time. So you eliminate this one person, this person will no longer have any more victims, right? Hundreds, maybe thousands of lives put right, dozens of families saved from destitution, from decay, from ruin, from depravity. So then, you can ask this question while you're reading this book. Is there ever a time in which one has a moral obligation to commit a crime for the greater good? And again, you can put greater good in quotations. And is there ever a time in which lying is justified? Because, he murders this person, but he has to now cover it up. So anytime you're covering up something, you're lying about it. You could even ask this question again. This is why we have such a strong debate on the death penalty. There are still states in the United States that have the death penalty. Is it okay to eliminate a person when they've committed something that is so egregious? There was a documentary that I was watching. Speaking of consuming UK media, this was in 2020. I went on an entire binge watching documentaries on prisons, not jail, prisons. So in the United States, side note for my non-American viewers, my non-US viewers, prison and jail are not the same. You don't want to go to jail, but you really don't want to go to prison. So in other cultures, countries, languages, dialects, prison and jail are synonyms, depending on their system. No, in the United States, prison and jail are not the same. And prison, if you go to prison, you really done did something. So anyway, there was this English reporter who came to the United States and did an entire series on the US prison system. And he specifically focused on inmates who were on death row. And when he was adamantly against the death penalty, and you can tell he still was not fond of the death penalty, but when he heard about some of the egregious crimes that some of these people did, he only went to male prisons. No, that's not true. I think, did he go to a couple female prisons? Yep. I think he did. But the focus was on male prisons. When he found out, and don't quote me, but I'm generalizing, he did say, I can see why the death penalty exists. There was one guy who it was crimes against children. And he was like, he was like, this is why the death penalty exists. And so again, murder is a crime, but in whose hands in whose hands is it a crime? When is it considered a crime? If you're using it to enact justice, is it a crime? So you can use this whole narrative and this whole question, all of that to say that Dostoevsky is posing here and apply it to different facets, right? All of that to say, we were also talking about lying because our character, not only did he commit this crime, which he thought was justifiable, he then has to lie to cover up this crime that he still deems to be justifiable. Lying can always be forgiven. Lying is a fine thing because it leads to the truth. No, what irks me is that they lie and then worship their own lies. They may all be drunk at my place, but they're all honest. And though we do lie, because I lie too, in the end we'll lie our way to the truth because we're on a noble path. So again, it could be one of those things, all of the word salad that just came out of my mouth. Are there times when the means justify the end? Oh, so I'm going through this review that I haven't looked at since 2021, the end of 2021, mind you. So there was a point in my academic career where, as an undergrad, I thought I wanted to become an attorney. I thought I wanted to be a defense attorney because I love a good debate. Okay, I love a good debate. I love taking the needle in a haystack and finding something and figuring something out, and looking at things analytically from a certain perspective. You can probably gather that from my reviews. So there was a point where I was taking certain classes to get some pre-law in there. Believe it or not, my institution didn't have a pre-law class or pre-law major in undergrad, but you could kind of cater certain classes to fulfill that. I ended up not going to law school. I changed my mind and I'm glad I did. But anyway, so I had two classes. One was called Sociology of Law and the other was called Conflict. And we spent a lot of time actually discussing murder and why murder is considered one of the worst crimes you could ever commit from a sociological standpoint. And I remember my professor arguing that also the outcome of a court case can often be determined because he had gone to law school. He also wanted to be a defense attorney and was like, I don't want no parts of this. So now he teaches law. He did work in the legal field for a period of time, but he was like, I hate this from actually doing it. So he was saying how, again, you can often predict, there's always outliers, but you can often predict the outcome of a case depending on the parties involved and their demographics. So, for example, a person at a higher social standing, depending on what society or culture you're in, determines that high standing, commits a crime against a lower person, meaning they have lower social standing in a certain culture or environment. Typically the outcome favors those who have a higher social status. So we even studied in this class, looking at certain cases, how murder is considered particularly egregious when the person committing the murder, the person is they're committing a murder and it's like a godlike, they're acting in a godlike way, because who are we to deal out death and judgment? That was a quote from Gandalf the Grey, but who are we to really deal out death and judgment? Who are we to judge when a person's life should end? We are not all knowing, right? We are also fallible. However, there are nuances to murders. I wrote a paper arguing that when murder is committed from a lower standing person to a higher standing person, that is often, I looked at certain cases, considered more egregious than when it's committed downward. There's a point that I wrote. There's a reason why. Because it goes against the hierarchy. There's a reason why I'm sure I put all of this in the review. So, all of this to say, Raskolnikov's crime was committed towards somebody who wasn't well liked. So in a way, he committed it downwards. Do we apply more nuances to certain cases, and we want to reason it a little bit more, have more sympathy for, say, in a fictional case like this, when we have sympathy for the main character, we know the main character. Oh, I see why he did it. That's what's so great about Dostoevsky. He puts the reader in these positions where you have to, he's almost putting the reader in a position to sympathize or empathize with somebody who's a criminal. Okay? They're wrong. But, but when the crime or the thing is committed against somebody who's already distasteful, we start to reason. And he goes to show that as human beings, we are full of contradictions and we're all capable of making excuses, perhaps where maybe excuses shouldn't be due. So you can't discuss crime and punishment without talking about madness. And so Rebecca and I joked, and I feel like this is in a lot of Dostoevsky novels. It was in The Idiot. Everybody in here is catching a fever. Okay, they got brain fever. And so again, are we all, this is just classic Dostoevsky, are we all on a spectrum of madness? And how am I trying to say this? I am stuttering. Are we all on a spectrum of madness? And since nobody's immune to it, if you want to look at it from this point of view, do the right circumstances have to align to bring that madness about? His basic idea is that there's no specific disorder in a mad person's organism, but that madness is, so to speak, a logical error, an error of judgment, a mistaken view of things. He was beginning to rave. Something happened to him suddenly, as if it all suddenly went to his head. So Raskolnikov, my Russian viewers, my Russian speakers, help me. Raskolnikov, in particular, seems more predisposed to madness than some of these other characters. He seems to lack impulse control. And even though he's able to rationalize his decisions, he doesn't seem to be able to comprehend their consequences until after the fact. So it's almost like he's not that intuitive, or he doesn't have this sense of discernment or foresight to recognize or even kind of hypothesize what the consequences of his actions may be. So therefore, when he commits this murder, he spends so much time in delirium. Like, again, everybody got a fever. My boy got fever. And he's delirious. He's extremely moody and feverish in the aftermath of his crime. And so Rebecca and I, when we read this, were particularly intrigued by Dunya, who is Raskolnikov's sister, because she's very rational. She's very calculated. She's very controlled where her brother isn't. So is Sonia, who is a young prostitute in this narrative, who is also a true victim of her circumstances, yet she has this uncanny ability to remain sensible in extreme circumstances. And Dostoevsky writes, again, I've said this about Dostoevsky before, I think I have I? Maybe I haven't. I think he writes very fascinating, strong, and compelling female characters. You see it in Crime, you see it in The Idiot, you see it in The Brothers K. There are no female characters that I can recall in Underground. Perhaps he is paying homage to how he views Russian women of his time. So, typical Dostoevsky, he likes to write these nuanced characters. He likes to play devil's advocate with many topics. He likes to reveal the light and the dark in his characters, which is in all of us. Unlike Dickens. Dickens, when a character is bad, they're bad. When a character is pure, they're pure. And how is it that you could give away your last penny and yet kill in order to rob? So let's go back to Sonia. Sonia is a prostitute who is, again, I love Dostoevsky, who is actually the most moral of all of these characters. And she's incredibly religious. There is I am not even going to pretend to pronounce this last name, but there is another male character in this story who is slimy. And yet he serves as a benefactor. Is it to Sonia? I'd have to reread the book to know, but he serves as a benefactor. And even though our main character, who is a murderer, so you have, again, Dostoevsky and his light and dark in characters, his nuances. So we have Sonia, a prostitute, So society would look at her and say, oh, bad, bad, prostitute. But she is very moral, and she has the most religious faith out of all of them. She has very strong Christian convictions. She's just has a lot in life that she didn't choose. Then we have another character whose name I cannot pronounce, but he was slimy, but he still serves as a benefactor. So there is some good that comes out of him. Then we have our main character who commits a murder, but he also helps a woman in her family when this woman's husband suddenly dies. So again, it's Dostoevsky marrying this idea that there is good and evil lurking within all of us. And again, Dostoevsky is, you could argue that he's projecting or he's rationalizing some things that he's dealt with himself. He had strong moral and religious convictions, but he also had a lot of vices. What's interesting about our main character is that he never really quite regrets his crime. He will always be able to rationalize it. Like he's in a sense, he's like, I did what I did and I know why I did it. What he does end up coming to terms with, though, was morality versus immorality. It wasn't a human being I killed, it was a principle. So I killed a principle. That's a dangerous mindset to get into, though, when you start just looking at people as ideologies versus flesh and blood. So, however, he does, again, this is Dostoevsky writing a character, though, who comes around full circle. There is redemption for this character. However, he's able to rationalize, he's eventually able to understand the morality of his crime. And again, Dostoevsky uses somebody at the bottom of the totem pole in society, Sonia, a female prostitute, who's considered below. She's the lowest of the low, right? And this redemption, the vessel that is used is Sonia, who constantly remains concerned over the state of Raskolnikov's soul. Through her, he realizes that spiritual redemption is possible. So Dostoevsky does love to weave in themes of religion and spirituality into his works. That's nothing new. He does believe that faith is the backbone of society. And without it, a society crumbles and becomes depraved. What's interesting, and he's always taking cracks at socialism. He does. He's constantly cracking at socialism. But before I get into this last quote pulling from the book about socialism, this is also a very biblical concept about Sonia, between Sonia and Raskolnikov. This character, Raskolnikov, has a full circle moment. And it's done through Sonia, who has a strong faith. She has strong convictions in her Christianity, regardless of her lot in life. She believes what she believes, and she knows it to be true. And so through her continued supplication, if you will, perhaps intercession for this other character, standing in the gap for, believing that he's not lost, this Raskolnikov will get saved. He will be saved. He just has to accept the faith. He has to acknowledge that regardless of what he's done, that redemption is available for him. That's very biblical. When the Bible talks about, us being vessels on earth to carry out God's will so that more see truth, right? So Dostoevsky is pulling from biblical themes here. But let's get into this quote about socialism, because Dostoevsky always was taking cracks at socialism. He hated it. And then we're going to wrap up because we're talking for 25 minutes. It started with the views of the socialists. Their views are well known. Crime is a protest against the abnormality of the social setup. I'm not lying! ! I'll show you their books. With them, one is always a victim of the environment and nothing else. Their favorite phrase. That's why they have such an instinctive dislike of history. That's why they so dislike the living process of life. There's no need for a living soul. The living soul will demand life. The living soul won't listen to mechanics. The living soul is suspicious. The living soul is retrograde. And I still condensed from that quote because it was quite long. Interesting. I said, this is interesting. It made me think of some of the rhetoric we hear today about victimhood. Who is and who isn't a victim and why? There are some... Do I want to go there? I'll use myself as an example. I had someone once assume that I was a victim and I had a hard life because I'm not white and female. And I looked and I was like, what about me says victim? Why are you assuming that? Because society tells you that people with certain character, with certain traits and certain demographics automatically had a harder life than you because you look a certain way. That is concerning. And I'm going to leave it there. Stop looking at people and assuming that they are one way or not just because of how they look. Everybody has a unique background. They grew up a certain way in a different environment with different demographics and different social pressures that shape the human being. Can we stop categorizing people and assuming things just because they look a certain way? It's ridiculous. Anyway, I'm not going to get on that rant today. I look at this person and I'm like, you don't know me. Don't look at a person and assume you know them because of their gender and their race or ethnicity or nationality. It's dumb. It's dumb. Anyway, Crime and Punishment. We gave it a 4 out of 5, my friend and I. I enjoyed it. It's typical Dostoevsky, complex issues of morality, spirituality, psychology, redemption. And it's definitely one that I need to reread eventually. I would like to read through more of Dostoevsky's canon before I do any rereading at this point. I finished The Idiot. I'm having a hard time speaking. I've been talking a lot and now my voice is going. But this year I have some short stories of Dostoevsky I would like to read, and I have finished The Idiot. But the next big novel of Dostoevsky's that I will read is Demons, and that is pending for next year already. So anyway, I'm ready to stop talking. I have been talking for almost 2 hours doing these recordings. Have you read Crime and Punishment? What were your thoughts? It's one of those novels where there's a lot that you can discuss, but when it comes to reviews, you kind of have to pick and choose. But that's what Rebecca and I, when we read it, chose to focus on. Please feel free to leave comments and thoughts below. Also, feel free to like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more book shenanigans. I post all of my book content there first, with the occasional goofy reel in the Instagram stories. Because why not? We all need a good laugh. And the mail just arrived. Exciting. It's probably bills and ads that are a complete waste of paper. But anyway, with that, you know what? Follow me on Instagram. I will see you in the next one. Bye.